Welcome to Ipsos Creative Corner. I'm Samira Brophy from Ipsos Creative Excellence. In this edition, we are going to talk about Virgin Atlantic's award-winning See the World Differently ad with two of the people who made it happen and our global effectiveness expert and author of Misfits. So let's dive in with my brilliant guests. Welcome to Creative Corner. Could you introduce yourselves, what you do, and tell us what your favorite in-flight drink is?
Hi, I'm Annabelle Cordelli from Virgin Atlantic, and I am going to start my journey in the Virgin Atlantic Clubhouse, and I'm going to have a Virgin Redhead, which is my absolute favorite drink. And then as I make it onto the flight, I'm going to have a glass of champagne.
Hi, yes, I'm Alice McGinn. I'm a strategy partner here at Lucky Generals. And my favourite drink is very similar to that of Annabelle, actually, in terms of, I think champagne is always pretty special when you're on a flight. Drinking something so sort of beautifully crafted at 35,000 feet, travelling at 500 miles an hour is pretty kind of mind-blowing when you actually think about it. So, and hopefully, I'm turning left as well, so...
Great. Well, I fear on the drink I may not have as an exotic a choice as the two of you because I'm teetotal, but we'll get to that. But I'm Adam. I head up our product at Ipsos Creative Excellence and have a role to play in our thought leadership with Misfits. And yes, my drink. So teetotal. I am a connoisseur of fizzy waters with different carbon levels. So I do like a good brand of fizzy water when I'm traveling at 35,000 feet. And sadly, as the time increases, I'm less and less likely to turn left. But the drink is always helpful.
And for the record, mine is tomato juice. I will not touch the stuff on terra firma, but get me up in the air and I cannot get enough of it. I don't know what it is. So we are all joyfully different, which is one of the reasons to talk about this ad, because you have a social sort of ESG angle baked into it, but the other is just cold, hard effectiveness. Now, See the World Differently was one of the strongest ads tested in the UK out of thousands of ads in our Ipsos database with a creative effect index of 185. So for context, 100 is bang middle average. Adam, could you tell us about why a great CEI matters?
Yes, happy to. Well, it matters very simply because what we observe on average via our sales validation with market mix models is that the higher your creative effect index, the higher your sales lift potential. So it's really about end sales value to the brand that's investing in that campaign.
And Annabelle and Alice, I know you've been sort of out and about because the response has been so brilliant. Could you tell us a bit about the response in terms of business outcomes, the wider industry reception, as well as something about, how your colleagues have received it, because they are the absolute beating heart of this campaign?
Yes, I'd love to talk about all of those aspects because overall it's been a huge success on many levels. And if I start with business first, overall, we're trying to get, millions of people to buy and experience Virgin Atlantic. And on that level, at a sort of macro business level, it's been hugely successful. When the campaign went live, immediately we saw significant increases in things like, website traffic's a great example, but also conversion into bookings. So you could tell, it really struck a chord instantly. But if you step back and look at our results for 2022, we beat, 2019, which is exceptional. So pre-pandemic and, one of our best years yet. So overall, really positive in terms of, total business performance. And then when you sort of look at it from a brand perspective, on an equity level, we've had 1.7 points of equity growth year on year. And that has been significant. It was the highest of any long-haul airline on that time scale. So a huge result for us. But something that we have also been really pleased by is the impact that it's had on people. And that if you look at our existing sort of colleagues at Virgin Atlantic, we already have very high happiness index and measures around inclusivity. But on the back of this, it's, I think, just renewed a sense of enthusiasm for what we stand for. And we've seen the scores around feeling like I can be my true self at work increased by 6 points. And then also the other thing, we're obviously recruiting for all sorts of jobs across Virgin Atlantic. And what we saw instantly were huge increases in applications for all sorts of jobs. A good illustration of that is sort of middle of last year, we advertised for new cabin crew roles, and we were trying to recruit 600 roles, and we had more than 10,000 applications.
It's always lovely to have your work sort of recognised, but I think what's particularly special about this campaign is that it's being recognised by the people represented in the campaign itself. So it was named Television Ad of the Year for the Visionary Honours Award, which is a new sort of, I think it's about 4 or 5 years old, award around actually celebrating culture that's driving sort of social change, whether that's media, arts, entertainment. And then it also won Marketing Campaign of the Year at the British Diversity Awards. And I guess from us as a creative agency perspective, you think of like the Cannes, the big creative awards, but actually it's really nice that it's getting recognition from a different set, but equally important set of awards as well.
Okay, we'd like to get under the hood a little bit more now. And there's obviously a lot of work and a lot of thinking that's gone into making this campaign such a success. Now, with your permission, I'd like to frame my next few questions based on a framework we use to help keep our clients honest when they go about making any ads that have any sort of environmental, social, or governance angle. So that's reminding them to basically be true to the facts. So you need to have a solid foundation of action, be true to the people. So, how do you do that genuine empathy, honesty, take people on a journey? And then finally, be true to the brand, which I don't think really needs any explanation. So let's start with being true to the facts and your solid foundation of action. How did Virgin Atlantic walk the walk before starting to talk the talk?
So the idea that we have, collectively come up with and feel really excited about is that we, champion the rich individuality of our people and our customers. And the decision to put people at the heart of this was very, very intentional, because the people, all of our people are absolutely fundamental to the service that's provided and the enjoyment that, our customers experience. And, that truth about Virgin Atlantic has always been at the heart of, who we are. And importantly, what people recognize and value about us. And when we were researching this and went back around that again, that became more important than ever as we were emerging from the pandemic. But also in, understanding that in terms of the world around us and all the change that we were sort of, experiencing and what the world was going to look like. So I think it gave us really sort of fresh impetus to look ahead. And with that idea came a real onus as well. How are we going to, as you say, not just talk the talk, but walk the walk as well? And how we're going to make meaningful changes that would really evidence what we stood for, what we're talking about. And I think, a great example of that is the change to our tattoo policy that came very quickly after that. And again, just recognizing that that's a form of self-expression and something that was really important to, everyone at Virgin Atlantic really shows up as themselves every day. It's a really important part of the individuality and personalization around the service that we offer. And, that and being able to express yourself with your ink just became something that was, really exciting and a good proof point at that time. Really, our people responded incredibly well to that. Shortly after that, we then had another conversation that was emerging. It was actually on the back of, the communications that out there, the conversations that we're having externally, internally, which was around uniforms. And we actually had a request from a couple of people internally wanting to wear an alternative uniform. So it sparked a really good conversation, which ultimately led to us, with it, changing our policy around uniforms and then sharing that story around gender neutral uniforms so that you can choose the uniform that best expresses yourself. Choose the red, choose the red, choose the burgundy. It's what you feel like. And again, it's they're great illustrations for me about what it means to express your individuality so that you can show up as your best self and, you know, deliver ultimately a service that feels really special, really personalized, and unique to Virgin Atlantic.
I love it. And especially if you think in the context of how iconic those Vivienne Westwood uniforms are, really, to kind of play with them. And I love that. And that's such a solid ground for the campaign to stand on. So moving to the next sort of piece of the puzzle. So how do you stay true to the people then and really bring your strategy to life? And I wonder, Alice, if this is one for you from the planning side.
Yeah, it's interesting because people often, I think, as a strategic planner, when you say people, your thoughts immediately go to consumers, people in the, you know, civilians in the sort of real world. But what's quite interesting about this campaign is that it's one where we worked literally inside out. So the context we had was that we had created a new brand platform for Virgin Atlantic, See the World Differently. And the work was going to be the first expression of that campaign. So we knew that actually, in order to substantiate it, we needed some tangible evidence of how Virgin Atlantic sees the world differently. And Annabelle and I went on a sort of mission, didn't we? Looking at every single different thing we could potentially talk about in terms of illustrating our difference as brand. And we had great claims like the sort of youngest, sort of cleanest fleet in the skies, the things we're famous for, like those pepper pots were, you know, people are encouraged to steal. But actually, it was through a conversation that we had, again, with people. And one specific person, our Virgin Atlantic's head of crew, who actually revealed to us that, you know, the best example of Virgin Atlantic's difference, as Annabelle has said, is Virgin's people. And specifically, there's some really interesting kind of nuggets that demonstrated that to us, in as much as, you know, unlike other airlines, Virgin Atlantic don't make their crew follow a script. So obviously there's things they have to do at certain times as part of delivering a brilliant service, but actually in and around that, they're encouraged to be themselves and to actually bring, you know, their own personality to the job. And then again, we did some further consumer research with our existing customers and potential customers. And we found that actually what they really value is actually the sort of individual way in which they're treated when they travel with Virgin Atlantic. So we thought there's a really nice kind of coming together of a shared mindset there. Crew who are encouraged to be individuals and our customers who love to be treated like an individual. And it was really that kind of shared philosophy that we put at the heart of the campaign to bring to life. And then we had to go about, well, how do we bring a real kind of, I guess, human-centered, people-centered approach to how we execute. So the story across all the work, but particularly in the TV, is that of a group of not just crew, but crew and customers making their way through an airport and onto one of our planes. And actually it's a celebration of them just, you know, being who they are. I am what I am. But to really make sure that all those sort of real individuality of each character really shone, we then worked with Virgin Atlantic's internal people networks and external ED&I consultants, because we felt it was very important that we, you know, put a very diverse sort of cast of people as the heroes of the campaign. But even within that, we wanted to make sure that they were more than kind of one-dimensional representations of their community. They were individuals that had all those individual qualities and characteristics. So again, Annabelle and I had some really brilliant conversations with those communities who just opened our eyes up to things that I don't think we would necessarily have seen otherwise, would we, Annabelle? Like just, you know, things like the difference between West African and West Indian suiting. And that played a really big role in things like the wardrobe choices. Or there's a moment in the film where our old black gentleman in our loft does a little sort of jingle of some bangles, some bracelets that he's wearing. And again, that came from talking to the community who explained, oh, in that space, this is how someone might feel, how they might behave, what sort of body language and gestures they might use. So all of those really nuanced details, they seem like small things, but actually we fed them directly into the production to try and, as I say, get a really authentic representation of the people we were heroing and really let their individuality kind of shine and sparkle.
And I know that you've not just done like hard yards on making the people sparkle, but you've also thought deeply about who's behind the camera. Am I right?
Yes, exactly. So for runway, which is how we brought to life the change to our uniform code, we made sure that we appointed Camp Productions to shoot the piece, because they actually represent queer, diverse, ethnic minority creators, photographers, directors, and so on. So they, more than anybody else, were best placed to actually capture in a really authentic way how we wanted to bring to life the change to our uniform code. So it was a real sort of, people are layered through absolutely everything from the initial, kind of strategic choice to put people at the heart of the campaign, all the way through to how we produced it and how we executed it.
And you can really see that love, coming through from the camera, but also you can sort of feel the love from the production side of things, which I think is just brilliant. Adam, given what we know from your book Misfits, which is obsessed with the audience experience, can I get your take on what Alice has said?
There's so much you've said, Alice, and there are, I think, some connections to what we've observed in Misfits, and really the objective we have with Misfits, by the way, is to really understand what creativity means in advertising and how it can help to spark brand growth. And just as a brief headline, in the book, we identified 3 audience experiences that we see are important in delivering that growth, and we see parallels in your work and in your campaign. The first is a creative experience, so that entertainment, feeling that it's unique and very talkable for the audience. The second is empathy and fitting in. So really that sense that the advertising is reflecting you, the world around you, something that you can relate to. And finally, creative ideas. So this sense that what you've seen is actually something new. It's different. It's unexpected, and as a result, the advertised brand is considered to be different. And if we bring those experiences, which we see have a direct relationship to short-term sales and longer-term market growth effects, we see that the campaign for Virgin that we're discussing here really over-delivers on that creative experience. It's so entertaining. It's not something people have seen before. You've seen it in your business KPIs, Annabelle, that the conversation around it's very talkable. So we see that in the data in our Creative Spark retest. And it's those creative ideas as well, so that just that sense that it's quite distinct, quite different. And as a result, for your brand, the difference really shines through. And we see in particular that's quite important to longer term market growth, market share growth. So this campaign, our data would suggest, as well as delivering those short-term effects you've mentioned, could probably support that longer term market share growth, keeping an audience and now customers for you as you grow out your share for the airline.
I think, Adam, your point around entertainment is a really important one, because we have made some purposeful communications, but Annabelle never briefed me to make a purpose ad, in inverted commas. The objective was always to get millions of people flying with Virgin Atlantic. It was a commercially led objective, but actually in making the work, we're very sort of cognizant of the fact that we're a brand that sees the world differently. So how do we even do purpose-led communications differently? Because there is potentially an assumption that purpose is a serious subject matter, but do you necessarily therefore have to execute it in a way that is serious? What we wanted to try and do is create purposeful communications that were actually also playful and premium and entertaining, as well as a sort of, I guess, a different way into that conversation.
That actually brings me very neatly to pillar number 3, which is about staying true to the brand. And I think it's very clear you did not set out to make a purposeful ad. You set out to make a great brand ad. And actually, when we look at the ESG ads in our own database, there is a very clear distinction in terms of cold hard effectiveness between ads that are a little bit, here's a big topic and an issue, insert brand claim here, versus ads where it's really kind of well integrated and it's much more kind of speaks to the brand's tone of voice, identity, and basically what it stands for. So there's a huge kind of difference in effectiveness. So I know you've touched on that a little bit already, but do you have any builds for us on how you made sure this was unmissably, distinctively a Virgin Atlantic ad?
It's a huge passion of mine, Samira, as well. And I think it goes back to really getting hold of what are those brand truths, what are the distinctive elements of the brand. And I am obsessive about that. So we had a lot of conversations about the Virgin Atlantic red thread and how that would be, integrated, those cues and signals from the brand, as an example, were really important in terms of thinking about, branded impact and taking you on that journey, but in a way that felt really special and integrated and not forced. And that has taken a lot of, it took a lot of time and, conversation and debate actually as well.
I think
it's harder than it looks to do.
I think the brand platform helped us as well. I'm thinking back, Annabelle, to when we had that request from a crew member about the uniform. I think the sort of knee-jerk reaction could have been to go, right, well, let's just completely change the uniform or, get rid of it. But I remember you very clearly, Annabelle, saying, no, we've got a real strategic conundrum here because, we want everybody to feel like they belong, but we also have a really powerful brand asset there that we need to also remember that, it signifies who we are. It's, puts the fun and glamour into aviation. So again, that's where we use the brand platform to help us sort of navigate that conundrum, because it made us realize that actually it wasn't necessarily the uniform that needed changing, but the uniform code. So that's how we navigated that particular kind of challenge. But again, always with the brand first.
I think it's being really clear on your brand fundamentals, and some things are just not ever up for debate, and you get hold of those, you take your platform, you think about your idea and what do we want to go and, tackle, what do we want to go and talk about.
Annabelle, Alice, Adam, it's been a pleasure. Hey, thank you so much for being on this edition of Ipsos Creative Corner. I hope it inspires more people to make belonging as joyful as you managed to do. I'm Samira Brophy. Thank you for watching and thank you for joining us.